When they opened the seventh coffin, the stench hit like a slap. But it wasn't the smell that made the detective throw up. It was what the body was holding. A baby doll, wrapped in fresh cloth, still warm. And standing above it, barefoot in the dirt, he whispered. She was trying to breathe. I heard her. Tonight, you'll hear the voice of Malcolm Arinze, a man who lived with 7 dead women, slept beside silence, and called it love. What he reveals tonight isn't just disturbing, it's something darker, a truth that defies logic and redefines madness.
I never understood what people meant by closure. It always felt fake, like taping a broken mirror and pretending the shards won't cut you. I was 29 when Ada bled out in my arms. She was 6 months pregnant. My wife, my light. She'd been smiling 5 minutes before. Then something changed. She said she was dizzy. Then she dropped the mug. Then she dropped herself. And that was it. No screaming, no drama, just a silence too loud to be real. I held her for hours, the baby inside her still kicking. I pressed my ear to her belly. I swear I heard 2 heartbeats. I didn't call the police, didn't call the hospital. I couldn't. What was I supposed to say? That God had taken my family before they even began. So I washed her body, wrapped her in her favorite gel and gold lace wrapper. I carried her to the greenhouse behind the house. That's where I laid her down. I sealed the door, not because I was hiding her, but because I was protecting her. The next night, I heard her breathing, not crying, not calling, just breathing, soft, rhythmic, like she was asleep and didn't want to be disturbed. I went back to the greenhouse, but I didn't go inside, not because I was afraid, but because I didn't want to wake her. They said I grieved, strangely, that I smiled too much at the funeral. I didn't hold, but grief isn't always tears. Sometimes it's pretending they never left.
You did not bury her. Did you plan to?
Bury her? She wasn't dead. Not really. Just 3 years later, I met Grace. Quiet, like Ada. Loved to paint. Her laughter reminded me of water in a dry place. I told her about Ada. I told her the truth. She said I was grieving. Said she understood. We married after 2 months. She moved in. By the 5th month, she was pregnant. Then it started again. The dizziness, the bleeding. And just like before, she faded without screaming. I didn't panic. I just knew she belonged with Ada. I laid Grace beside her, wrapped her in the blanket she knitted for our son. And when I closed the greenhouse door, I heard 2 things, a sigh and a tiny thump, like a heartbeat against wood. I thought maybe I was cursed, but not evil. There's a difference. And anyway, they never really left. Over the next 8 years, there were 5 more, all different. But they all came with laughter and left with silence. Tonya was the one who fought. She screamed when the bleeding started, begged me to take her to the hospital. I said no, not because I didn't want to save her, but because the house told me it's too late. I didn't kill them. I loved them. I fed them. I sang to them. Even after they stopped talking.
After the 2nd time, didn't you think something was wrong with you?
I used to sit by the greenhouse door, hold my own breath, just to hear theirs better. I wasn't alone on that land. There were watchers, eyes in the trees, voices in the vents. They told me things, told me how to preserve them, how to keep the bodies soft.
What do you mean, preserve them?
Clean environment, cool shade, no embalming that ruins the voice. And always talk to them. Because if you talk long enough, they start talking back. When they came for me, I wasn't afraid. I even offered to walk them to the greenhouse, said, "Be quiet." They're resting. They laughed until they opened Ada's box and saw the baby doll wrapped in Juliet's wedding veil. Still warm. Love doesn't die. It just changes shape. You can call me a monster, but I never buried my wives, because monsters bury what they kill. I kept mine.
If love is patient and kind, what do you call the kind that waits after death? Malcolm Arinze lived in a farmhouse buried in solitude, a place where silence bred secrets. After authorities discovered the first 3 coffins, their unease transformed into disbelief. Each box was lined, labeled, and preserved with disturbing care. The names stitched into the linens weren't just names, they were memories. Ada, Grace, Tonia. Malcolm called them his wives. The neighbors called them rumors. The police, they weren't sure what to call them at all. When Juliet arrived, she had no idea what had been buried beneath the flower beds. She was soft-spoken, drawn to the quiet life Malcolm offered. He cooked, he prayed, he painted her belly with shea butter and kissed her forehead like a man reborn. There were no signs of cruelty, no bruises, no locked doors, but there were things she couldn't explain. The padlocked greenhouse for one, and the dreams. Every night in that farmhouse, Juliet dreamt of women humming lullabies in the walls. She thought it was pregnancy nerves. Malcolm told her it was the spirit of motherhood settling in. By her 6th month, Juliet began to bleed, just like the others. She begged Malcolm to take her to a hospital. He refused. He told her that hospitals break families, that Ada had bled too, and she got better once she was home, surrounded by love. He told her to lie still, to breathe slowly, to listen. So she listened. That night, the wind outside cried like an infant, and the walls, Juliet swore, whispered her name. Juliet died on a Thursday. It rained the whole day. Malcolm wrapped her in the very sheets they used on their wedding night. He placed her gently inside a handcrafted coffin, beside the others. One curious farmhand wandered close to the greenhouse. He heard what he believed was a baby crying inside. He reported it. 2 days later, the sheriff came with a warrant. They opened the greenhouse at 3:18 a.m. Inside, they found 7 wooden coffins, one of them slightly ajar. A baby doll lay in the crook of Juliet's arm, wrapped in a fresh cloth, still warm from Malcolm's embrace. He stood barefoot in the dirt, watching them, smiling faintly. "She was trying to breathe," he whispered. "I heard her." The officers found notebooks, hundreds of pages. Malcolm had documented every meal, every lullaby, every moment of silence. He had spoken to them daily, believing they listened. He never called it madness. He called it marriage. And the house? The house wasn't just haunted, it was obedient. Every door opened for him. Every floorboard silenced itself when he walked. Malcolm never hurt them, he insisted. He only kept them safe, alive in memory, preserved in silence. What do you do with a man who doesn't know he's a monster? The trial began in early autumn, beneath a sky that never quite decided whether it wanted to rain. Malcolm Arinze entered the courtroom barefoot. No shackles, no expression. To the public, he looked like a man sleepwalking through his own horror. But to the detectives who opened those coffins, he looked exactly like what he was, a man who kept the dead warm. In one he wrote, "Their silence is sacred. Their stillness is peace. If I speak too loudly, I might wake them before they're ready." In another, "Each crib holds a prayer I once loved. The babies sleep where they are safest, close to the breath of their mothers." The jury couldn't look away. Not because the words were graphic, but because they were beautiful, disturbed, twisted, but beautiful. 2 psychologists were brought in. One called him a classic case of delusional grief disorder. The other simply called him dangerous. Neither could answer the real question. Why did no one stop him after wife number 2? Or 3? Or 4? The court examined the neighbors who turned a blind eye, the pastors who offered condolences but no suspicion, the midwives who never returned. Everyone had seen the signs, but no one had stepped into the greenhouse. Because monsters don't wear blood in Elm Hollow, they wear love, and they grow gardens. Malcolm was found guilty on 5 counts of unlawful concealment of a corpse and 3 counts of obstruction of justice. He was sentenced to 18 years, but he never left the greenhouse, at least not in his mind. In prison, Malcolm built a new routine. He swept the floors, whispered to cracks in the walls. He tore his uniform into strips and wrapped them like swaddling cloths. Every evening, he hummed a song no one else recognized, a mix of Yoruba cradle rhymes and broken lullabies. God said he slept with his arms cradled around air. Inmates called his cell the crib. No one wanted to bunk with him. And then, 1 year into his sentence, the crying started. Late at night, always around 3 a.m. Not loud, just enough to be heard. Malcolm would smile and whisper, "Shh, you'll wake the others." Investigations were launched. The prison was searched. Nothing was found, but the crying continued. Even after Malcolm died, they say grief echoes. But in some rooms, it never leaves. He never buried them, because some part of him believed they would wake. And now it's the rest of us who can't sleep. If this story shook something inside you, don't scroll. Subscribe because the next case might hit even closer to home. Drop a comment, we read every confession, and share this video. Someone you know needs to hear it.